Life is all about relationships, whether you're in your business, whether you're in your partnership with your loved one, or even with your children. Everywhere you turn, it's all about relationships. But what we don't really always look at is how those relationships are. Are they healthy relationships? Do they affect us in a positive way? Or are those type of relationships that turn us down and knock us down? It's something that we all need to look at. Hello, and everybody, welcome to Let's Get Real. We're here to talk about things that are going to empower you, to strengthen you, and maybe even make you think a little bit, because sometimes we just take too much for granted. My name is Glenda Kroll, and I am one of your hosts of today. And allow me to introduce my side partner here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Harvick. I'm always so glad to be here on Wednesdays. And it's so amazing because there's so many synchronicities with this. I've spent probably the last 2 or 3 days either on the phone or on Zooms with people talking about relationships. And it's so interesting because what happens with people when you look at a relationship, you have to take many aspects into consideration. You know, what does that relationship mean to me? What is it doing for me? What is it doing for them? And I was talking this morning to a very dear friend of mine, and what she was talking about is that she felt like she was outgrowing her friendships. And that's happening a lot with people right now because our earth is rising in its frequency. Well, what happens when that happens is that the earth is taking us with her. And so we are rising with her. And a lot of times our energy is mismatched. And so you don't quite have the bond that you used to have with other people. And it's just kind of an organic thing to where some people kind of go away. And you always send them away with love, because anything you send out, you're going to get back. But it seems to be happening a lot more is that people are going inwards, looking at themselves and looking around at who they're hanging out with. And it's not always merging like it used to. So I totally agree with you on that opening statement, Glenda. It's really an interesting time for everyone.
And that's what we're going to be getting into today. So, it's time that we have to sit back and we have to look at things realistically in our lives. And our guest today is, I'll tell you something. When I listen to her, she's a TED Talk award-winning person. And I was so taken back by this woman. And I'm so excited that we get to have her here today and have some great honest conversation. So Nicole, would you do the honor of introducing this lovely lady?
I would love to, because I'm excited as well. I've known her for a couple months now, and she's just amazing. And when I read this bio, you're going to be like, it's pretty impressive. And she is the host of Her, and that's the name of it, talk show. She, like you said, is a TEDx speaker. She's the founder of Her Nation, which I'm a part of. She is the creator of the Sober Society, and she has been featured on over 1,000 podcasts. I don't know how that's possible, but that's a very impressive number. And the one thing I want to say about her is she is the kindest and most down-to-earth person I've ever met. And I am so glad to welcome Sabrina Victoria to our stage today. And there she is.
Ladies.
Yeah.
Hello. You know what? I really love this friendship thing that you guys were talking about, because I've done that. I've lost some friendships.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is crazy, but it's like a 26,000 year cycle. And the first time ever that the earth had to upgrade, because we've so destroyed her. And what she decided to do instead of a flood or anything else, she's like, let's take my people with me, because that way we don't really have to start over as such. And so some of us are going with her, and we're raising our vibration. And it's not that someone's bad or you don't like them. It's you don't resonate anymore. You just don't resonate anymore. And the thing you do is you send them with love, you send them with grace, and whatever you send always comes back to you. So it's just kind of it's an interesting thing. very organic.
Yeah. And really clearing that out, I think also there's only space in your life for so many people. I think sometimes we don't recognize that. So when we clear space of maybe somebody who's just not assisting in your growth mentally, emotionally, physically, it then opens the door for somebody else to be able to come in.
Right.
True.
And it's like I said, that, you know, maybe they've been waiting for a very long time for that entry. And it just so happens that, you know, there's that the synchronicity of them being ready to come in when someone goes out is really amazing.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of times we think that's just relationships, but that's friendships too, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that was great that you guys mentioned that.
But are not friendships relationships?
Yeah, 100%. But we always correlate it with romantic relationships. Like, girl, you got to leave one in order to get another. But that's also the same with friendships, you know?
Well,
Like,
and you look at it, even people in a business relationship, you know, your people you work with relationship, you know, how do you work well with people if you haven't formed some form of a relationship? Every single moment, every single area in our life is built through relationships. Your children, there's still relationships. If you don't have a good connection with your children, there's something that's gone on that's broken the bond of so in your relationship.
100%.
So we have to look at it, and just as what Nicole's saying, you know, in our relationships, you know, there's whether, you know, if the universe is changing and that, but we're all growing, and we're all growing on different levels and different platforms and, you know, different ways of our world. And we're changing as we're growing, hopefully. And as we change, we're not always in connecting with someone. And that's really important. We have to, instead of holding on to people that might hurt us or keep us down, and we need to be growing and moving and obtaining our new dimensional selves. We can't have, you know, it's like you can't go swimming when you're wearing an anchor.
True. Yeah. Very, very true. Yeah. Yeah. And so, Sabrina, you said nothing was off the table. And I know, I listen closely. I saw something the other day on your Facebook that I thought was so beautifully done. And I've never seen anyone do this. And it took courage and it took love. And it was, you are breaking up with someone that you've been in a relationship with.
Yeah, 6 years.
But it was done so eloquently. And you ended it with, there's still love there.
Yeah.
How does someone get to that point? Because, you know, there's so oftentimes so much anger, so much animosity, so much hurt, and so much pain. Yes. How would you explain how you were able to do that? And, you know, talk about vulnerable, to put that on Facebook. I was just like, oh my gosh. And then as I read it, I'm like, this is gorgeous. This is how everyone should do it, right from the heart.
Yes.
Okay, so since I am the odd man out and I haven't seen it, and that's cool, because it's time to share it here with us. Please tell us. We'll dive into a bit of your story, because somewhere along you're intertwined somewhere. So tell us what you posted on Facebook.
I don't have it up. I don't have it exactly, but you know, it basically was that, you know, we've been together for almost 6 years, and there's all the same feelings of any other breakup, right? He said, she said, broken promises, heartache, tears. And we also learned a lot. You know, we also grew a lot. We also healed a lot. And I think one of the greatest realizations that I have had probably over the last decade that has so helped me with reframing and my mindset is 2 words. And those 2 words are yes and. So like all the things that Nicole said, right? Like, and we also lived a life together. Yeah. You know, we also loved, we also had good times. We also laughed. So we always have a choice on what we're deciding to focus on. When the good times were good, they were really good. And when there's bad times, they're also really bad. But we're deciding what to actually focus on. And in my life, in my world, there's already enough just in the world of negativity. So to sit in the negative, to sit in a low vibe, to me is unnecessary, one, and just wastes so much time. So it's like I acknowledge the not so good. And girl, we had fun. We had fun. And so that's, that's my mindset in most things that I do. And, I was able to thank you, Nicole, for giving me some props on that, but being able to express that same mindset in a post to be able to give others hope, to be able to give others a option of a different way of doing it.
And I like that.
Yeah. And that's what we're just talking about. You don't know who needs to see it like that.
Yeah.
And instead of doing it in hate and anger and animosity, which you're going to push right into your body and hold there, you're doing it with love. You said at the end something about love and there are options. And I think people need to see that. So kudos to you for being so brave.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a human too. I have emotions. I have feelings. I've cried. There's been a lot of ups and downs, a roller coaster over the last few days. And I'm good. I know I'm going to make it. My story is very dark at times and I've made it through. And I think one of the things that I've really been able to do that I always encourage everyone to do is make sure that you're keeping a running list of all of the amazing things that you've done in your life.
Yeah, I love that.
So often we just kind of toss yeah, I did this. I did this. It's like, girl, we need to write that down. We need to running the list of all of the accomplishments we've gone through, all of the challenges we've gone through, all of the amazing hurdles that we've jumped so that when stuff like this pops off, we can say, yes, wow. Mm-hmm. And I've done this before. I've been here before, and I'm going to get through this just like I got through all of that other stuff. And when we can really start to see a rhythm or a cycle or an assurance for ourselves, it gains confidence. Being able to do this, go through this, post this is helping me with my confidence to be able to show up stronger and more powerful in the weeks, months, years to come.
And I think what you said is exactly the most important point, because we tend to digress what we have done, what we've successfully made through. We downplay it, and we turn around and whatever we have sort of failed at, or I'm not calling it a failure, but where things haven't turned out, we put that to the top, like we set it on fire as if it's like the most important thing. So we have to learn that that's exactly it. Because when I go through, I always talk about what has happened in your life. What have you made it through? What are the things? And let's build on those things. And what haven't you made it through? Because we can build from that too. We got to learn that there's good and bad. There's learnings and so much that come from that.
Absolutely. And, I think when you put it like you did, keep like a running tally of how amazing you are, it keeps you in a place of self-love and self-respect instead of pushing you down. So you look at it and you're like, regardless of what that person said about you or how they made you feel at a certain point, and I wish I would have had this 10 years ago. You can say to yourself, well, wow, I did that. I did that by myself. Okay, I'm good. 100%.
And especially a little trick for everyone listening here. If you put all your wins, accomplishments, hurdles, challenges on an Excel spreadsheet where it's numbered, then it's like you don't always, like when you're in the thick of it, you're not always like reading off all the things, but you remember, there's 262 things on my list of awesomeness that I have done, right? Or whatever the number is. Could be 24, right? We're not trying to put a number to it, but just knowing the number to be able to say, I can do this too. I can do this too. I can add this to the list. This is just another story. And the other thing is also, and we were kind of talking about this, the importance of sharing our stories, is at this point where I am in my healing journey of life, is the struggles and the challenges I now take on as like a hell yeah, because I know that this story is going to be used for inspiration. So instead of my old self where it was like victimhood and woe is me and oh, look what he did. Oh, poor me. Listen to this story while I talk for 2 hours about it and cry. It's like, not that there's still not tears, right? But now I am so like in a good place in my life where I know that this story is going to be used at some point. It's even being used now. Look, just days after, to be able to elicit somebody else to be able to pivot, change, and reframe their own life, their own story, and help the community, help the family, help, the nation, help the globe to be able to rise up. So when we're doing that, when we're taking ownership of things, when we're using our story for good, right? That's using your story for good versus bad. Then you're helping everyone rise.
I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, let's dive into a little bit of your story, because you are the lady of the hour right now, and you have such an incredible story. Like I said, I always like to check on and see who's coming in as our guest, and I was blown away by your TED Talk. And most importantly, the messages in that TED Talk were really important, that people need to understand that we don't need to be the victim of our lives, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about where, bring us back about, let's start, when you first realized, or, give us a little bit of a lowdown so that our audience will know what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Well, a little bit about my background. So I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. For those that don't know what that is, it's a fairly strict religion. And I wound up getting pregnant at 20 years old, and I wasn't married. And that was the huge pivot that changed everything in my life. So Jehovah's Witnesses believe that in this thing called disfellowshipping, which means if you do a gross sin like sex before marriage, then there are repercussions for that, or consequences for that. And one of them is to be disfellowshipped, which means you are cut off. You lose communication with every person you have ever known. So every friend I had ever known, and my entire immediate family, everyone was literally cut off within like 72 hours of me announcing that I was keeping my baby. And the reason I say keeping my baby is because I am pro-choice, even though I was a Jehovah's Witness. Jehovah's Witnesses are not pro-choice, they're pro-life. I am pro-choice. And I made a choice to keep my baby. And because I made a choice to keep my baby, that's a choice, the repercussion, right? Because I could have aborted my child silently, quietly, and everything would have stayed the same. No one ever would have known. But because I decided to keep my child, I had to choose at that moment between a child I had never known and everything I had ever known. That's a hard decision to make. And I chose my child. And that choice led me down a path, ladies, of just darkness, single mom life of no money, digging in my couch cushions for 25 cents to put gas in my car because I'm negative $137 in my bank account, eviction notices on my apartment door every other month, car getting repoed out of the parking lot, wanting to commit suicide, wanting to murder my baby because I'm dealing with postpartum and I don't know I'm dealing with postpartum. So I'm feeling like a really shitty mother. So I don't even deserve this child or me or the word mother or whatever that means. And I don't know how I did it, but I did it for about a year and a half, paycheck to paycheck, barely breathing. And I was praying to God, for help in any way. And I thought God had provided me with a man. And this man had money. and he was well off. And I fell hook, line, and sinker for all of the tricks because I thought he was given to me by God. He had 100 red flags blatantly stapled to the front of his body, clearly. And I ignored every single one of them. Even in my head, I was like,
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
We're all guilty right here.
And I still did it. And yeah, he presented me with gifts that were you can't afford your house anyways, move in with me, just keep house, you don't have to pay rent, a gift. Your job sucks anyways, work for me, we'll build an empire together, a gift. And before I know it, I own nothing and have nothing, right? He winds up taking my phone over because he's barely paying me any money. I can't even afford it. Takes my car over because he's paying me barely any money. I can't afford it, but I'm living for free, right? So I'm working 16-hour days. I'm making $250 a week, paying for groceries and daycare, still dead broke, but I have a house that's given to me. I have a car that's given to me. Nothing's in my name. I have a phone that's given to me, a computer that's given to me, nothing in my name. And I'm working. The more control he gets, the worse the abuse gets, mental, emotional, sexual, and financial abuse times 10. One day, I will never forget, 8 years in, I'm on the floor in the bathroom having a total mental breakdown. Like the kind where you're crying and screaming at the same time, like death is coming out of you. Yeah. And I did a Google search while in the fetal position on the floor in the bathroom. I will never forget, through my tear-filled eyes, I could barely see the screen. I Googled, why is my boyfriend bullying me? Because I didn't know any other vernacular other than the word bully. He's being mean to me. And Google, I always say Google saved my life. Google said that I was in a narcissistic relationship, that I was codependent, that I had high empathetic vibes, that I had no voice, that I had no boundaries, and I had absolutely no idea about anything regarding money. And I learned two important things that day. First, there was a shit ton wrong with my partner. Second, there was a shit ton wrong with me. And in that moment, I had a choice to make. I could either dive deep into what is wrong with my partner and all the things that are wrong with my partner, and I could make him wrong in all the areas that he is wrong, because he was wrong in a lot of areas. Or I could dive deep into the world of what the hell is wrong with me and figure that jazz out. And luckily, I don't know how I was able to do this, but luckily I chose option 2. And
that was brave.
Some people do not. Some people don't. Some people dive headfirst into trying to fix their partner.
Yeah.
And they spend years, just wasted years on what's wrong with them. And then all this backlog of you can't get out until you fix yourself. You can't figure it out until you fix yourself. So luckily I chose option 2. I dove headfirst into personal development. I wound up opening 3 businesses, a secret bank account, all secretly. Over the course of a couple of years, I saved $50,000, and I literally just ran away one day. I took my son, my clothes, and my bicycle. I left everything else behind, the bougie house, the bougie car. We had 5 houses paid in full. We had 12 cars paid in full, $1 million a year, 0 debt. I left everything. I took my mattress, clothes. I didn't even take the mattress. Actually, I bought a mattress, clothes, bicycle, and my son. And I started all over again. I've never worked for anyone since. And everything that I do is committed to community. You have to have people around you that fully support you. The reason I ended up where I was is because I had no community. And number 2, educating yourself on things that you don't know that you don't know. Right? I didn't know about narcissism. I thought it was bullying. He's just a bully. Because there was a whole world that I didn't know that I didn't know.
And that's so true. I also was involved with a narcissist, and I didn't know about narcissism. I got married in my early 20s, and I didn't know that word even existed. Until, later on when I was looking at things in the same situation. I worked before. I made a good living. I made a really good living until I got married, and then the kids came, and then I ended up quitting my job, and And then I was, was told about how much I was getting and what they're doing for me, and how, how better my life is. Like, they're telling me about it, and I'm sort of going, well, yeah, I don't know. And until the day that I knew that I couldn't do this anymore because I was living the lie. So I really get it. But so yours goes, though, a little bit further. So I looked at it, listened to you about the fact that you were like, I know I was verbally abused, and I was put down mentally, and it took a lot for me to come through myself and bring myself back up and get that courage, and a lot of work. But you were also physically abused during this time.
No.
Oh, you weren't?
Sexually abused.
Sexually abused.
Yeah,
So,
which is similar, right?
Well, it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
So
it was a lot of coercive. So like a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
If you're not, then I'll get it somewhere else. Other girls and you're not. And there was some physical during the sexual, but in my brain, it's separate. I don't feel as if I was ever physically abused. He never outrightly just like in life just hit me. But that's like walking a thin line,
So let's talk about, because so many people, and I know I lived through it, of going through that, like, physical or sexual abuse is one thing, and it's not acceptable, but also what does a really whirlwind of things is when somebody is emotionally and verbally abusive, because that is another whole thing, because I know what it takes to come through from after that has been going on in your life for years.
Yeah, definitely. Takes a lot, for sure. And there's triggers still that I'm dealing with and going through, and certain phrases, certain tones, even ringtones can elicit from, and that was freaking forever ago now. That was almost a decade ago now.
Yeah.
And it, still, it's a consistent, like I said, we're on a healing journey.
And I think we will be for life. I'm pretty convinced that, some of the things that I went through, and mine was the same. Mine was the verbal. And I didn't even know what it was. Even after I was divorced, I thought, gosh, he's just mean. He's really mean, and to this day, I mean, like you say something, it'll be like, I'll hear something and it'll just trigger me. And I'm like, I don't know where it came from, but I've got to get rid of it. I've got to release it. I've got to transmute it. And so to me, it's like, I will just be on this journey the rest of my life. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not one and done.
So let's talk about the stages of how you came out of it, because, that really is the important factor for us, is we can't stay in that, because if we stay in that, you're going to be on a spiral down. It's not good for anybody to be living into that. So what were your steps that brought you out of that, or that helped you to move out of that?
Out of the relationship?
Out of the relationships and the verbal and mental, the abuse, of how you got your strength back, your confidence.
Yeah. So the number one thing that I talk about all the time is creating a plan. I actually just had this conversation with somebody. One of the mind frames that I had to alter when I was in that relationship is the loyalty and dishonesty, or unloyal and dishonest feelings that you feel. Because as a person, a good person, right? I identify with being loyal and being honest. And while I was planning this escape, I felt dishonest and disloyal. And what I really had to recognize is, and this is a mindset shift or mind frame shift, is, who are you being loyal to? That was a huge deal for me, because forever it was like, whenever I started to plan to leave, you have to be deceitful. You're like hiding things, and that feels weird. So I had to shift my mindset to, this has nothing to do with him and everything to do with me. So like I need to be loyal to myself and my inner child and my future self. And I have to be honest with me, my past and my future self in order to get out of this situation. So you have to separate yourself from the relationship mentally and just recognize who are you being loyal to. And once you can make that shift, like definitively, then the action, the planning, all of that comes way easier than it does when you're doing it in a mindset of dishonesty and not being loyal. So that shift was a huge game changer for me. And then, girls, I literally planned everything. I say that my departure from this relationship was so on point. It could have been like, it could have won the Guinness Book of World Records. Like,
Well,
I don't know how, but but it was all planned.
I understand because you're talking my story. That's exactly how I got in my
Like I look back and I'm like, damn, that was good. Like that would be a great movie. You know, you see these movies of like, you know, they're like robbing a bank and just everything works out. And you're like, oh, frick, there's no freaking way. But
I know. You and I could sit there and then talk about this because exactly how my life was too.
Yeah.
Every single detail for 9 months, I held it together and planned and set up my new life without him knowing. And I get it because you get to the point is you have to believe in your own self-worth. You see, when you come to a point in a relationship where somebody is knocking down your worth, they're telling you you're not good enough, whether you're pretty enough, smart enough, whatever enough, that you get to a point you have to know within yourself. And I know because I had to go through this. Never mind was I not smart enough the first time, but I had to go through it the second time. It was the second time that I realized no one's going to do to me what I got done the first time. And you have to learn that you need to know that you are worth it. And nobody is worth knocking you down, even a slight, even a little minimal. Nobody is worth to do that to you. And you have to believe in that in yourself so that you don't start feeling guilty. You know what you're doing is for your own good and possibly your own children.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And how old was your son when you did that? And how did you keep him safe mentally and physically?
Luckily at that point, I mean, my story is insane. That's a whole nother story. But my son was with his father every other weekend. So that helps. And then number two, we ran a door-to-door company. So we were in 4 different states and 6 different offices, and door-to-door runs at night. So luckily, all day we worked together. I worked for him, so we worked together. Well, I worked during the day. Who knows what he was doing? I worked during the day. Then by the time my son was coming home from school, he would leave to go help run the door-to-door in the afternoon, like 5 to 9 o'clock at night. So I don't know. It just wound up working out. And then he was only with us every other weekend. And he was honestly good to my son. My son is very well behaved, though. I made my son like he's a good kid. He's still a good kid. My kid's 20 now. I freaking love him. But it worked. It worked. My son didn't really have to see a whole lot of it. He did see some of it, obviously. I mean, there was huge outbursts that we would have at night that were just absolutely insane. So to say like he was totally sheltered from it would be a lie. But to actually be there, standing there and like seeing it physically, I mean, very, very little.
Good. Yeah.
But, that's also, part of the growth situation. And now we don't tend to want to put our children through things. But, like I've gone back, speaking to my kids and, the first relationship was their father. And, they knew as the years go by and we talk about it after leaving, and, your kids know what feels right and what feels wrong. And when they're in a relationship, that doesn't feel right, that's basically a lie. They're learning. Like, that's what my thing, that why I jumped out the first time, was I felt I was lying to myself and lying to them.
Totally.
They knew that it wasn't a healthy relationship. So, it's giving yourself that permission that, you're going to be, it's to groom them in the way that life should be, with love and understanding and compassion. That's what life should be, not where there's deceit and anger and resentment and so forth. So, what ends up happening, and God willing, when you get out of those relationships, is when you can do the work, never mind just on yourself, but also on your children.
Absolutely.
Because how else can we build our children up to, first of all, understand and in my way, to also apologize, because we always have to look at what we, are we doing something that maybe could hurt our child? And, so I think it's really understandable. I believe in, if we feel we're making a mistake, or we've made mistakes, or we've done something, that we need to, as a parent, to come back to our children and apologize to things, so that they can learn that, even mom and dad make mistakes.
Definitely.
And, when I read your bio, and you've got so much going on, did you start formulating that as you knew you were going to leave? How did these things all come together to create such a powerful empire for you?
When I learned what was going on that day on the floor in the bathroom, I, somewhere within that short amount of time, realized that I didn't want my story to be for nothing. It was so hard. Like, right now I tell the story and it's like, it was to live that life was so hard. I cried all the time. My eyes were puffy all the time. I felt broken all the time. I had no self-esteem. I had no self-worth. I had no confidence. I felt like dying. I felt like driving off a bridge. When we lived in Pittsburgh for a long time, there was this bridge that we would drive over every single day to go to work. And every day I drove to work, I would be driving with my son in the car. And I'd be thinking to myself, all I have to do is just turn the wheel.
Ooh.
Just turn the wheel just a little bit, and all of my worries would go away. And the only thing that kept me from not turning my wheel is I would say one thing to myself, one sentence. I would say, I can always do it tomorrow.
Wow.
I can always do it tomorrow. And I knew that if that day was so bad, because my days were so bad, but I knew that if that day was so bad, the bottom of the barrel bad, that I was going to go over this bridge again the very next day, and I could turn that wheel the next day. And I did that over and over and over and over for days and months and years. I did not want that to be for nothing. It had to be for something. And when I found out what was wrong, I promised myself that when, not if, when I escaped that relationship, I would use my story to inspire other people. That was a promise that I made to myself. And I am here, and I am fulfilling that promise that I made to that younger Sabrina, because I owe it to her, right? I owe it to her. I promised her that day that I would use her story, because she was the one that went through that, not me. I did not go through that. She did. And I have to fulfill the promise that I made to her going forward. And that's what I do. I set myself up. I set myself up every year for the following Sabrina to take the baton. So
I love
every
it.
year I am fully invested in knowing as much as I can, going through as much as I can, shifting as much as I can, so that I am getting myself ready to hand the baton over to the next Sabrina, right? Right now I'm 41 years old. I'm about to hand my baton off this year to the 42-year-old Sabrina. And what am I giving her? What am I giving her? I have to give her something worthy of being taken.
Wow.
And that is just the mindset and the goal and the journey that I set back then, and I intend to keep that every single year till the day I die.
And I love that you honored that person that you were, because she's a very important part of your journey as well.
Yeah.
You know, that showed strength and resilience to get through that and to come out on this side of it. And I love the fact that who was Sabrina this year, because one of my things is we've got to keep growing and morphing and becoming, because I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm not even the same person I was last month. You know, I feel there's differences. And so I'm so pleased to hear you say that you honor that inner child, if you will, that inner Sabrina. And, you know, I'm sure she might pop up here and there. But with the look on your face and the smile, you know, all of you, all the Sabrinas that were and will be, are doing really, really well.
Yeah. And just really showing gratitude for keeping me here. Because at any given time, she could have given up. She could have gone into alcoholism. She could have gone into drug abuse. She could have made her car go off the bridge. She could have given her child away. And this isn't judging anybody, right? There's no judgment, but I'm also very grateful that she made the choices that she made to get me to where I am. And I owe it to her now to pay it forward.
Wow. What a beautiful story that is.
Thank you. Thank
you. And it's so important because, you know, they've done a lot of studies on people that have jumped over bridges or jumped off of bridges. And there was a few people that have actually made it after they've jumped off. And every person that had made it had said that the moment they jumped, they regretted it. Oh. And yes, so we have to realize is, you know, there's all different, you know, whether you're physically jumping off or emotionally jumping off, we have to realize how important it is. Just like you're saying, there's always tomorrow. So, you know, if anybody is, you know, hearing this message and thinking this to themselves, it's really important that we put it out there and that, you know, there is always tomorrow. And I think, you know, I understand and I honor you for such determination and such, you know, pushing forward. And I know part of that is also the mom in you, because as women, we tend to give more because of our children. And it begins to be a lot of our reason why of doing things. And I know that was how I made it through on so many of my falls in my life. Was always my biggest why were the kids. So, you know, thank God for having that such beautiful human being that you have, that you know, they save our lives, and you know, and knowing how much that love is what is important, and it feeds us. It's just like that food in our bodies that we need, right? That beauty of that relationship. So kudos to you and to your beautiful boy for giving you that power within, because that is power.
Yeah, it's
you know, to get up every day and it's sometimes such a hard thing to do. And we have to realize that, you know, for people that are watching, that it's okay if you can't get out of bed that day. Like, we got to learn that we can't keep knocking ourselves down. We have to give ourselves, especially when you're going through such brutal, hard time, that you've got to give yourself permission to say, it's okay. You know, we don't always have to have that power day in, day out. And I'm sure there was times where you just feel like you're going to give up, but even the power, right, of still making it through, like you said, tomorrow. But even the power that, days where you can't put yourself together or you can't, but you just say, okay, even if I do nothing today, you still made it through the day.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And just give yourself grace. Just give yourself grace. That's so important to understand that you do get a day of rest, whether it's your body or your mind. Sometimes we just need to be in that moment of that now and not think about what happened before, what's going to happen tomorrow, but just love ourselves in that moment. So important if you can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your mindset now and your goal, like now you're ending another relationship and moving forward. What were some of the key things that made you know that it was time to move forward from that relationship that you're currently have just walked from?
Yeah, this was difficult because it's my second engagement. So for those that have been engaged a couple of times, for those that have been married a couple of times, it starts to get awkward. It starts to get like, girl, what is going on with you?
Yeah.
And sometimes we stay in spaces for longer than we should because we're recycling other people's opinions in our head. And we don't even know what their opinions are. We're just making shit up. We're just like, they must be talking. And are they talking? Are they not talking? We don't even know, but it's none of our business, right? So a lot of the situation is, it sounds weird, but it's like, it wasn't even for me. It was for my community. I talk all the time about authenticity. I talk all the time about if you're complaining about the same thing for 6 months in a row, for a year in a row, and it's the same thing over and over and over again, and there's no change, exit, move, pivot, refocus. And the more that I'm saying this to my community, the more that I'm in my inner dialogue, realizing like, girl,
no. How true are you being to
we're
yourself?
complaining about the same shit over and over and over again. And
you gotta look in the mirror.
There's no change. So it was an era of like, girl, we can't be living this authentic life of do all the things and then this area of your life be hidden. You have to do hard things, show up in that challenge so that you can inspire other women to do the same exact, or other people to do the same exact thing. And so really taking it out in that mindset. I know that sounds weird, but honestly, that's really what triggered it was I gotta get my shit together. I can't just be a flamingo over here with my head, or an ostrich over here with my head in the sand, pretending like this isn't an issue, just because everything else is looking all hand. My health is good. My finances are good. My joy is good. But I got this little like ostrich hanging out over here. We got to ship it up. We got to shape it up. So, yeah, I mean, that was just my own advice, basically, my own rhetoric in my head of me teaching, and finally just realizing, you know what, we got to move on and move out.
And that's brave. That's a hard reality sometimes. And when you're especially talking about yourself, it's like, wait a minute, am I living what I say, what I tell others? And it's like, oops, I'm not, got to move on. So that's what I did love, but you did it so lovingly. It was really special.
Just like Ramona's saying this right now, right? It's not weird at all. Yeah. It's really, it's got to be real, and we got to be real to ourselves. Like everything starts with us. Like, how do we live with ourselves? If we can't look ourselves in the mirror and be true to ourselves, then what the F are we doing? Like, let's look at being really true, right?
Honor yourself. We're worth spectacular things. And if it
Yeah.
becomes not spectacular and you're not walking and talking in step, it's like, you know, what are your options?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. And I think it's really important to recognize, like, there's time, right? So it's not like we're just all of a sudden we feel a thing and we have to act on it right away, right? Like, oh, there's disagreements, we're ending this. There's a process. There's a process that has to happen. But it's not when it happens, it's does it happen? Right? So there's no time limit on anything, but it's just making sure that there's action that is actually being taken. This isn't judgment on, ooh, there's issues. Well, you better work on that right now, right? Because we have other things. There's 1,000 things going on in our lives. So pressure, but like Nicole said, grace also.
Mm-hmm. Got to allow grace in there.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. You know, it's okay to sit in something that's uncomfortable for a little while and just make sure.
Yeah, right. That's the whole idea, right? When you make a decision, at least you know you thought about it. And it's not that it's on a whim. It's like, you know, it didn't work this week, so we're just going to call it off. You know, that's not relationships. There's hard times through it, you know, but it's are you living through those hard times constantly? Is there always something there? Is there, you know, are there conversations that aren't happening?
Yeah.
Because that's the other part. Are you feeling that anger or that resentment or something in you, and you need to start talking about it, and it isn't happening? So all of these things that are just so important.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we wish you good in your new life that is happening, and it's like, you know, it's time to pack the bags and move on and do what you know you're supposed to do for yourself.
Yeah, and I think she's like a cat. She has lives. She doesn't just have one. It's like we're going to be seeing a lot of cool stuff with you. You know.
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me the space to share my story and get emotional. I super appreciate that.
Oh.
Well, we're here to be real, and we're here to, you know, like I said to you earlier, it's about when we can be real and talk about, you know, we all fall, we all stumble, we all, you know, have great things where we all go to the moon too and have all these joyous things. But that part of life is going up and down and into the valleys. But, you know, the whole thing is if we need to talk about it so that others feel safe in talking about it as well in themselves.
Absolutely.
And you're right. People need to hear a conversation like that to understand what is okay. These things are okay. You know, your own feelings, your own emotions, how you want to end it or not. I mean, there's a lot of things to think in your mind, but it's okay. It's okay to be thinking about it and then doing it.
Definitely.
And being true to yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. That's the key.
So tell us, and then what are you looking at as your new goal for yourself?
My new goal?
Yeah.
Oh, girl, the visions are huge over here.
Yay.
I love it. Okay,
yeah, I mean, the big goal, if we're getting risque over here, is to take Her Nation to the stages.
Woohoo!
Yeah, and we're looking at tens of thousands of people in the audience. So we're setting a foundation right now. We're on a 10-year plan of, you know, creating a really solid foundation for Her Nation, the community, the support, what it stands for, the mission. To start out with smaller events, you know, 20, 30 people, then 100, then 1,000. And we're looking at stages that are huge auditoriums and bringing these women on stage to share their stories.
That is so, so wonderful.
Yeah.
And the best thing for me about this is, you know, women are always called catty or talk behind your back. This is your group it's one of the most solid that I've seen that truly supports other women. And I think that is so important right now.
Yeah.
And so I can't wait to see what you do. I know it'll be fabulous.
Yeah.
And how does somebody get involved in your group?
Well, the website is hernation.life. You can easily drop in there, see what we're all about, check out the headings, all the things. Our Facebook is also hernation.life. You can also just look me up. I take calls all the time. I take networking calls all the time. I'd love to jump on a call with you and say hello to you. But yeah, check us out, hernation.life. Check us out, see what we're all about. But it's all about community. It's all about networking and working together. So the whole concept that I teach is a teacher-student concept of we're all teachers, but we're also all students.
I love that. And it's
And
so
it's
true.
Important. Yes. We, like I just said the other day to somebody, you know what? I will be learning till the day I die. And that's really what life is supposed to be, right? We're all, we teach each other. We also are students to each other so that we can learn. But we have to realize that not everybody is the teacher.
Yeah. Good point. Yes.
Being understanding where you're coming from and what you've been through, we all have to also realize that, are the people, as we talked about at the beginning, are these the people that are building you, or are these the people that are pulling you? So we have to be careful of who we take connections to, because they might not be the people that are going to uplift us.
Yep. And that's where we pivot.
Yeah. Quickly.
Yep.
Quickly. Yeah, very true.
So as we're heading to the end of our, unfortunately, the end of our hour now, it always goes by too fast. Through everything that we have talked about and here, can you give, some type of a silver, some type of something that somebody else can look at that would give them a golden nugget to moving forward in their life?
Yeah. My mantra since I was 28 years old is one sentence. You have to take a deep breath before you say it. And the sentence is, everything's going to be okay. That's it. That's it.
Thanks.
It's literally as simple and strong as that.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That moment of faith.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Thank you. Such incredible wisdom. So easy, but yet so difficult. I love it. Thank you very much.
That's the whole thing. It's the ease of it, right? It's literally the ease. Everything is going to be okay. And when you can believe that, that's where your list comes in.
Yeah.
Right? You have to prove to yourself that everything's going to be okay. When you can see the consistency of that, you can really believe that when you say it to yourself.
It's the number one thing of having faith, having faith that for me, my word is everything always works out.
There you go. Same.
Everything always works out. Nicole, what could you give us today for your wise words of wisdom?
Well, when I was going through my divorce, when you're mired in something, you can't see the why. You have no idea why this is going on. Why is this happening to me? What should I do? Where do I turn? And it's only when you've gotten out of that quagmire that you're in that you can look back and you can say, didn't happen to me. It happened for me. Moves me ahead to help others. And one of the things that I always think about is regardless of what we have going on in our lives or how we feel, whether it's emotion, whether it's turmoil, whether it's pain, whether we're not making enough money, we don't feel well, I just say to myself, what if what I'm going through in this moment is preparing me for everything I always wanted? And I just keep going and going and thinking, I would have never known that horrible divorce that made me sick was going to prepare me to help other women pull themselves out of what they're in. So I just think whatever you're going through in that moment is preparing you for something much better.
That's good.
Beautiful. That's really good. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're winding down for Let's Get Real, I ask you please to, if you've been watching us, there's a lot of gold little nuggets in today's session. And please share it amongst others because so many people have to hear this. Sabrina's story is so unfortunately real, and it's happening to so many. And it's time that we realize that you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this. And just that you do need to have faith. And the best thing to have faith is to listen to other stories. So thank you so much for joining us today on Let's Get Real. We're here to service you and most importantly, to help you grow and be your own hero of your own story. Thank you. Bye for now.